Number 10. Black Heath. Black Heath is Samuel Smithers. Yep, in the reality of 1610, Plant Man is instead a mutant. His powers are similar to that of Poison Ivy, allowing him to control plant life. Black Heath was one of the mutants who was kept in William Stryker's camps. While there, he ended up meeting and befriending Storm, and would be one of the few mutants left when Utopia came about. Number 9. Mach 2. Mach 2 is Nomi Bloom. She is kind of like the second coming of Magneto, but not as much of a villain. Or at least, she comes around in the end. And not inherently as powerful as Magneto was. She can basically affect and control magnetic fields. Later on, she would see a power boost which would enable her to have more control over objects containing metal. Mach 2 is also known for being a rival to Kitty in terms of her leadership over the surviving mutants of Utopia. People are going to be like, what is Utopia? And I'm going to be like, don't worry. We're getting to that much later, but it's coming. It's slowly you'll get little bits of information.
Number 8. Abigail Brand. Abigail Brand burst onto the scene in the astonishing X-Men, where she assumed the leadership of SWORD, or the Sentient World Observation and Response Department, a specialized branch of S.H.I.E.L.D. dedicated to safeguarding Earth from extraterrestrial threats. Now at first, her relationship with the X-Men was far from amicable, and she had no intentions of collaborating with them. However, her perspective underwent a significant transformation as she grew closer to the X-Men, and particularly sparking a romantic connection between the two. From the get-go, we knew that Abigail Brand was a unique blend of human and alien heritage, but it wasn't until several years into her character's evolution, during the Avengers vs. X-Men epilogue miniseries AVX Consequences, that we all learned of her latent mutant powers. She inherited pyrokinetic abilities from her mutant mother, shedding light on her own dormant mutant potential. But despite her newfound capabilities, Abigail often refrains from wielding her mutant powers when possible, instead relying on her remarkable prowess as an agent. It's also a little hard to call her a hero, but here we are. Number 7. Whizzer. Some of you may be extremely familiar with Whizzer. He's the speedster superhero from Marvel Comics that somehow gained his abilities due to a transfusion from an actual mongoose. It's absolutely whack, and he became incredibly famous for that origin. Not good famous though, like he became a joke. Which is probably a big reason that Roy Thomas later explained away that origin, mostly. Thomas's new take on the Whizzer's origin is that the Whizzer was already a mutant with super speed, but it was just that the mongoose blood transfusion, or maybe just the complete and utter shock of getting a transfusion from a mongoose, kickstarted the Whizzer's mutant powers, activating his mutant gene. And that does actually kind of make sense, sort of, I guess, only because the Whizzer's son was also a mutant. I'm not saying the mongoose part of this equation makes any sense though, don't worry. It doesn't. Number 6. Cloak and Dagger. Tyrone Johnson and Tandy Bowen were living on the streets when they were captured and experimented on by one Dr. Simon Marshall. Now, using his new experimental substances, Dr. Marshall had injected Tyrone, Tandy, and a ton of other captured individuals. The rest of the test group did not survive their interaction with the substance, but Tyrone and Tandy's latent mutant genes were activated to create Cloak and Dagger. There was one other who survived, who went by the stolen name of Martin Lee and became the villain Mr. Negative, but that's a story for a different time. For our two mutants, Tyrone, aka Cloak, developed a connection to the Dark Force dimension that existed within his cloak and allowed him to teleport, which was tempered by Tandy, aka Dagger's, light-based abilities that she could use as projectiles, which also gave her limited psionic and healing abilities. They are one of the more iconic duos in Marvel Comics, but not a lot of people realize that they are indeed mutants. Number 5. Namor. In 1920, Captain Leonard Mackenzie led a naval expedition to the Antarctic Circle that went pretty sideways and drew the attention of the underwater people known as the Atlanteans. This led to a meeting between Mackenzie and Atlantis' princess, Fen. The two fell in love and had a surface marriage. However, Leonard passed on in an attack from Fen's father, who did not know what had happened to his daughter. In the aftermath, a heartbroken Fen returned to Atlantis pregnant with baby Namor. This made Namor an Atlantean-human hybrid, but he is much more than that, as he's also a mutant. This means Namor has a very unique physical makeup. He exhibits the long life and increased strength, stamina, and durability of an Atlantean, though all of those attributes are enhanced due to his human side as well. He possesses aquatic healing, radiation absorption, aquatic telepathy, electrolocation, atmokinesis, and hydrokinesis, but on top of everything else, he can also fly, with the aid of fins on his ankles that look very much like bird wings. And fun fact, he was actually actually one of the first heroes ever able to fly on his own in comic books. Number 4. Justice. This is probably one of the more unique mutant gene activations. So, picture this. Vance Astrovic, just your average teenager who was secretly being looked out for by the Guardians of the Galaxy of the future, who thought he was in danger because of this bad guy named Korvac. Now, when Vance met his future self, who was a Guardian by the name of Major Victory, who didn't get his mutant gene activated, it kinda freaked Vance out, understandably, and that shock made his mutant power of psychokinesis burst into action. But it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows for Vance. His dad was pretty terrible to him during his younger years, and when he got these powers, it only made things worse. His father was really against mutants and took it out on his own son. So, Vance did what any sane person would do, and he ran away. He had some interesting adventures along the way, like hanging out with the Thing from the Fantastic Four. Now back then, he called himself Marvel Boy and even did some wrestling. Vance really wanted to be an Avenger though, but Captain America told him he needed more practice. Luckily, Night Thrasher and Nova were starting their own superhero team called the New Warriors, and Vance was all in. He quickly became one of their key members, meeting this awesome mutant named Firestar, and they kinda hit it off. Number 3. Vanguard. Nikolai Krylenko had a pretty intense childhood, to put it mildly. His dad, a Russian nuclear physicist, and the government realized that Nikolai and his twin sister had latent mutant abilities. Now for Nikolai, he possesses a mutant energy field that repels virtually all electromagnetic, kinetic, and gravitonic energy, which allows him to create force fields, fly, and redirect any energy repelled by his natural force field back at its source. So, from a young age, they were molded into soldiers. They ended up joining the Soviet super soldiers backed by the KGB. Now Nikolai took on the name Vanguard while his sister became Darkstar. They didn't have the friendliest encounters with American heroes, even squaring off with they started off as propaganda villains, but things took a crazy turn when their father got turned into something called the Presence. The government sent Vanguard and Darkstar to take him down, not realizing they were targeting their own dad. Luckily though, they figured that out, and when they did, they were like, nope, not cool, and turned against the Soviet regime. So, Vanguard, Darkstar, and another named Ursa Major became their own agents fighting for the good of the people, or trying their best to do so. Number 2. Santa Claus. In Marvel Holiday Special Volume 1, released on November 19th, 1991, with a cover date of December 1991, in a little story called A Miracle a Few Blocks Down from 34th Street, 'twas the day before Christmas, and all through the Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters, Cerebro detected what it called the most powerful mutant ever registered, who had just miraculously appeared in New York's Rockefeller Center. The X-Men obviously went off to investigate, but this massively powerful mutant was also detected by a group of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, who also went to try and capture the mutant for their own evil purposes, resulting in a clash between the two factions. But this mutant just happened to be Santa Claus himself, who used his insane power to briefly transform the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants into toys. He teleported the X-Men away, erased everyone's memory, and then made it snow, giving New York the first white Christmas it's had in a hot minute. Number 1. Miss Marvel. What most people know about Kamala Khan is that she possesses a latent inhuman lineage, which was activated by the Terrigen bomb. Her exposure to the Terrigen mist turned Khan into a polymorph with the ability to stretch her body in almost any way, and for a while, it stayed that way. Now fast forward to 2023, and Amazing Spider-Man Volume 6, number 26, with the return of the emissary seeking to sacrifice Mary Jane Watson. Miss Marvel protected MJ and fought off the villain, but while the other heroes involved were busy, Miss Marvel used her shapeshifting powers to impersonate Mary Jane and misdirect Emissary. However, he caught Kamala off guard by teleporting to flank her, and he took her life. Now Kamala revealed her identity to Spider-Man and passed away in his arms, but then, in the Krakoa Hellfire Gala from 2023, Kamala was surprisingly resurrected by the Five on Krakoa and was shocked when Charles Xavier, Emma Frost, and Cyclops revealed to her that she was also a mutant, making her an incredibly rare mutant-inhuman hybrid, and we still have no idea what her actual power is.
Number 10. Deadpool. Okay, so I know what you're gonna say. Deadpool's not technically a mutant, but hear me out. Deadpool is mutant adjacent in the sense that he is a mutate, and he has also long been affiliated with the mutants, even being a member of the X-Force team. So when it comes to Deadpool, I really feel like he's kind of earned his stripes. And you know, there's never gonna be a list that's like non-mutants that should be X-Men, because that doesn't trend. X-Men, we can't do that, so I gotta include Deadpool on this list. There was a time when he was actually actively trying to become an X-Men member, and they basically gave him temporary X-Men member status for a little bit, but he never really got to be a full member. The X-Men only even gave him temporary status because they wanted to keep an eye on him because they didn't trust him. I feel like Wade just really wants to find a place where he feels like he belongs and would actually be a pretty good asset to the X-Men team in a lot of ways. Sure, he can be annoying, and sure, sometimes he messes up missions. He's a sign. But at the end of the day, his heart is ultimately, I think, in the right place. Assuming he has a heart at the time and he isn't just, you know, like a disembodied head or something. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, and if you love it when I talk mutants, I know, I love it, be sure to let us know by giving this channel a subscribe if you're not subscribed already. And if you are, thank you. Number 9, Dupe. Wow, so I really thought that Dupe had actually been an X-Men before, but apparently he hasn't, hence why we're here. Dupe has long been affiliated with the X-Men, but has never actually been a member of the main team. Dupe has definitely been affiliated with X-Force, and later, as they become known, X-Statics, not Cable or Wolverine's X-Force to be clear here, but he's never actually been a member of the X-Men main team itself. I did notice that on his Marvel fandom page it seems that he's been listed as being a former X-Men, and I tried to look into that. The citation for him being considered an X-Men recently was 10 of Swords Destruction issue number 1, but I've read that issue and I don't know what that is in reference to myself. I even went back to the issue to make sure I didn't miss anything, and I couldn't find anything, so if I did, let me know what that's in reference to, because I do not know about that. I don't remember Dupe joining the team or being a part of it. I don't think he's ever actually been affiliated with the X-Men in that way, although he was for a while the receptionist slash janitor, I think, for the Jean Grey School of Higher Learning, so he has definitely been X-Men adjacent, but not actually a member of the main team. Perhaps that's why he's listed as being like a former X-Men affiliated person thing? What is Dupe even exactly? What is he? All I know is that Dupe should get to be a member of the X-Men because honestly his powers are crazy. He's one of those characters that can basically do just about anything whenever it's needed, so his powers are basically limitless with the way he tends to be written, which is why I would love to see him on the team. I mean, he can like move through margins of comics. That's pretty crazy. Not a lot of characters can do that. Number 8, Summoner. Summoner is a new mutant whose name also signifies the type of mutant that they are. They are the child of Apocalypse's first horsemen of war. Arakko, the landmass itself, was drawn to Krakoa and Krakoa to it. The two fused together to increase the size of the land overall, although Arakko is not yet considered safe and is basically known as kind of the monster territory part of Krakoa. I mean, technically it still isn't Krakoa, but they're attached now, so they are each other. Summoner's abilities allow them to summon the dark beasts of Arakko. We don't know too much about them yet because they've only been in a few issues, but what we do know is that they can withstand the blast of one of Cable's thermal grenades, his last one in fact, without taking virtually any damage. So overall, they seem like they're going to be pretty crazy and powerful. X of Swords, I'm assuming we're going to see more about them. Number 7, Dust. Dust is Soraya Kadir. She was enslaved as a child but freed by the X-Men. Originally, she did not want to reveal herself to the mutants and hid herself by turning into scattered sand. When Jean Grey sensed her presence and encouraged Soraya to reveal and introduce herself, she did so by referring to herself as Turab, which is Arabic for dust. She can turn herself into dust and manipulate her body to move at high speeds, causing her to become a deadly sandstorm to her enemies. As sand particles, she can also enter the bodies of other people, causing internal damage. Dust is also resistant to magic and telepathic manipulation or detection while in her sand form. Dust is another person that I feel like we never see enough of in the comics. Someone bring back Dust. Number 6, Leila Miller. Leila's abilities, skills, and powers tend to be pretty specific, which means that she might not inherently seem powerful to readers. Leila has been shown to be able to reanimate beings, heal wounds, and appears to be immune to reality warping. She also has a lot of knowledge about her own future life and the events surrounding it, as she spent time in the future and then returned and uploaded all she had learned into her younger self when she returned to that Leila's present, which I guess was technically her past. Her vast knowledge often comes in handy and is what helped the mutants to figure out who was really after the baby mutant Messiah during the events of Messiah Complex. Her own knowledge has also technically helped her in gaining the knowledge that she has needed to have in order to gain it, if that makes any sense. Timey-wimey stuff. Number 5. Maxime and Manon. Maxime and Manon are twin siblings born to mutant parents. Their powers as such manifested when they were younger than most. They haven't been in a ton of comics, most about probably 11 issues, but they have been shown to be pretty deadly and powerful even as children, both in Extermination and recently in the newest run of New Mutants. Maxime can influence others' emotions while Manon can alter someone's memories, or recall their memories past. When combined, their powers actually allow them to manipulate the minds of others to the point that they can easily control them, shaping their victims into whatever they'd like them to be and making them do whatever they want. In issues 3 and 4 of New Mutants, both Maxime and Manon were captured along with Armor, Glob, Angel Salvador, Beak, and the couple's children, but managed to escape. Manon and Maxime helped to free the rest of the group by distracting their captives, manipulating one of them into killing the other. Number 4. Mirage. You might not recognize her mutant name, but if you've seen the New Mutants film, or you are familiar with the New Mutants at all, Mirage will be someone that you maybe know. Mirage is actually Daniel Moonstar. Standard X-Men fans may be less familiar with Dani, but she has also been one of the X-Men, and she is known for her affiliation with the New Mutants crew and all the female defenders who are also known as Valkyroar. Dani herself became a Valkyrie when the New Mutants were kidnapped by Amora the Enchantress and taken to Asgard, so she doesn't just have her mutant power of illusion creation and telepathy, which originally she could only use to recreate the fear of others, but she also has some of the powers granted to Valkyries. Oh, and she can make cool psionic arrows too. Number 3. Strong Guy. Strong Guy has similar powers to another mutant we talked about on part 1 of this list. His abilities allow him to use kinetic energy to augment his strength, increasing it. However, he cannot hold the energy for long as it could severely harm him, distort his physical form, or even kill him. Still, even with the rule that he must expel any absorbed energy within less than 2 minutes of absorption, he is pretty powerful, using his powers to safely lift up to around 100 tons. Strong Guy's real name is Guido Carosella, and he first appeared in the original New Mutant series in issue 29. Number 2. A mutant with no name. In the alternate reality belonging to the Ultimate Universe of 1610, we got a story that introduced us to a mutant who had no name. This mutant's powers were so devastating that we were not permitted the time to get to know him. His powers had only just manifested, but they were so deadly that they caused the deaths of over 200 people in his hometown, including his parents and his girlfriend at high school, with the deaths being almost instantaneous. But there was no snapping involved. It wasn't a Thanos thing. No Infinity Gauntlet. His mutant power was basically to kill everything around him, radiating toxins and poisons that basically vaporize organic tissue. He was so dangerous, powerful, and deadly that Wolverine was sent to eliminate him, as the young mutant's existence posed too much of a threat to the mutant image, as well as both humans and mutants alike, just in general. Number 1. Matthew Malloy. Matthew Malloy is one of the strongest, most random mutants who now belongs to the alternate timeline of Earth 14923, because he was just too powerful to basically continue to exist. Like many of the most epic mutants, he had reality warping powers and was additionally considered Omega level in terms of his ability. Matthew's powers unfortunately were often tied to his emotions, which proved problematic and often resulted in massively destructive outbursts of energy. In the end, Tempest traveled back in time and, with help from Professor X of the past, was able to prevent Matthew's parents from ever meeting, meaning that he was never born. Number 10. Luka the Knower. Luka is a strange new character who I kinda love. Their powers are very interesting and unique. Luka in essence knows the location of everything and anything. Being considered as an Omega level mutant, as so many are in Araco who sit on the Great Ring, Luka resembles a night sky, looking like a sheet covered in stars with fabric that's made up from the cosmos. So cool! Luka's powers also might not seem so great in the sense that, you know, spatial awareness, while useful, isn't exactly considered powerful even when it's on a cosmic and universal scale, possibly even multiversal. Although the amount of times I've put down my phone and not known where it is, when it's even in my hand, I feel like having someone that you could just be like, yo, where's my phone? And they could be like, oh, it's right there. That would be pretty useful. However, when combined with the powers of a teleporter, while still strange, Luka's powers could be seen as exceptionally great, because then you can just like teleport anywhere. It's crazy.
Number 9. Cipher. Cipher has what some people believe to be a pretty horrible mutant ability, especially when it comes to combat. Personally, I would kill to be able to subconsciously translate any written or spoken language, human or alien. He can also subconsciously understand body language and intention, as well as decipher codes and computer languages. messages. After he was resurrected, and also so Marvel could make him actually useful, everything he sees is interpreted into language, basically making him able to read life. Everything I just said is strange enough, but I can wrap my head around it to some degree, I guess. But don't you dare sit here and tell me that this man can speak binary code. In New Mutants Volume 3, number 14, a guy operating a mech comes upon Cipher during a battle, and Dougie Boy speaks to the mech saying, "Hello, you don't have to do this. You know, I can set you free, show you how to think for yourself." The dude operating the mech understands him, since he's speaking English, but for some reason, the mech, which isn't artificial intelligence, also understands him, boots the operator out, and begins talking in zeros and ones. What?
Number 8. Gentle. Gentle is a mutant with the abilities of super strength. I know, very hilarious considering his name. He can grant himself immediate muscle mass that basically allows him to change size and increase his strength when needed. It is yet unknown just how strong Gentle can make himself, and he is also known for being someone who could potentially even take on the Hulk, although he is more of a pacifist, hence his name. Gentle's real name is Nezno Abidemi. I hope I'm saying that right. Nezno Abidemi. I'm sorry if I'm saying it wrong. It's a hard one to say. He was raised in Wakanda, but always felt like an outsider because his father was Russian. When his mutant abilities surfaced, it was actually Aurora Monroe Storm, who was queen at the time in Wakanda, who encouraged him to be sent to the Xavier Institute so he could learn how to better control his powers. His vibranium tattoos are also meant to help him to control those powers. Also, vibranium tattoos are super cool, but I think they're also super painful to get, so maybe don't get them. You can't, because it's not a real substance, but still. Number 7. Egg. Fabio Medina might not seem like a powerful mutant based on his ability, but since his rise to the supremely important mutant group known as the Five on Krakoa, he can be considered one of the most important and powerful mutants around. When he combines his powers with that of the Five, he has control over life and death. Originally, the bouncy gold balls that he shot forth from his chest were believed to be nothing special, but it was later revealed that these balls were actually infertile eggs, which could be used in the process of resurrecting new mutants. Number 6. Tempest. Eva Bell is another member of the Five. She has actually appeared in less issues than Egg, if you can believe it, despite the fact that she has a pretty neat power set, and it's been neat since the beginning, which allows her to time travel. Tempest, as she used to be known, was able to control the passage of time in a specific pocket of space. She could also slow time in a current space that she also inhabited, either slowing time around her or creating time bubbles to manipulate time in that bubble, where she could speed it up or slow it down. The only challenge for her has been losing control of her powers, which can cause them to behave unpredictably. Still, controlling time is a pretty impressive and powerful ability to have. Number 5. Empath. Manuel de la Rocha made his first appearance in the original New Mutant series, where he was part of Emma Frost's team known as the Hellions. He's recently reappeared in the newest Hellion series from 2020 and proves just how powerful, but also how sadistic he can be. Empath's power is, you guessed it, empathy, and he can use this power to not only sense others' emotions, but also to control them, in effect manipulating others into doing whatever he wishes them to do. His influence can be subtle, such that someone might not even realize they're being manipulated by him, or it can be more forceful, turning his victims into complete husks of their former selves and bending them fully to his will. Number 4. Vulcan. Vulcan is one of the most powerful mutants around, being an Omega level mutant, skilled in energy manipulation and absorption. Yet he is somehow the lesser known of all the Summers, despite his insane power levels. He has also demonstrated the ability to absorb his opponent's powers as well, and use them for himself on the rare occasion. Vulcan is the youngest Summers brother, also known as Gabe Summers, and we only learned of his existence in 2006 when he first appeared in the comic X-Men Deadly Genesis issue number 1, and yet he is considered the most powerful of these three. Number 3. Orphan Maker and Nanny. Orphan Maker still remains a relatively mysterious character, though is also one who still proves to be a force to be reckoned with in combat. Orphan Maker is also known as Peter and was part of a plot of Mr. Sinister's originally. However, when Mr. Sinister decided that Peter could not be controlled, he decided to eliminate him. Nanny, an insane cyborg, however, saved him, believing it was her responsibility to look after orphan mutant children and protect them. Although I will say she's got a weird way of going about it. While insane, Nanny was also once a scientist and remains quite intelligent. She actually outfitted Orphan Maker with weapons and a powerful suit to help her in her task. While it's still unclear as to what Orphan Maker's true mutant powers are, and while he seems to still have the mind of a child, probably due to Nanny's manipulation, his suit and weapons make him a formidable foe in combat, and he often uses pixie dust in battle to help Nanny influence and control the minds of their opponents, as she herself is a telepath, but a weak one, so she needs a little bit of help. Needs a little bit of pixie dust. Even during a fight with Cyclops, Scott's optic blasts were unable to harm Orphan Maker while he was in his armor, with Scott's blast simply reflecting off the armor, causing more harm than help, really. Number 2. Trinary. Considering the modern age we live in, Trinary is a pretty powerful mutant. Her abilities allow her to control all tech that is within her line of sight. She has used these powers to move massive sums of money digitally and to manipulate and control Sentinel tech. Currently on Krakoa, Trinary is one of the few technopathic mutants trusted with the important project known as Sleeping Giant, wherein mutants monitor for upcoming advancement in Sentinel technology, such as Nimrods or the creation of a mother mold, so that they can ideally put a stop to its development. Project Sleeping Giant were instrumental in helping the X-Men to destroy a mother mold that Orchis was creating before it went online. Number 1. Bailey Hoskins. Now you might think I'm joking here if you happen to know the obscure Bailey Hoskins, but I'm really not. Bailey appeared in his own miniseries titled X-Men, Worst X-Man Ever. He was known for being the worst X-Man ever because his ability only allowed him to do one thing: explode. But he didn't have any regeneration powers, so he basically was a mutant who could never use his powers, otherwise he'd kill himself. It's kind of a one-hit wonder. So how is that powerful? Well, it's also implied in the series that when he does choose to sacrifice himself and blow up the villain of the story, that he makes it possible for Earth 616 to come into existence. So without him, we wouldn't have the main Marvel continuity that we know and love today, potentially. If saving the entire continuity from becoming a dystopian future isn't powerful, then I don't know what is. Number 10. Karma. Karma is a mutant with very specific powers, so it should surprise no one that she is part of the New Mutants team. I actually love the New Mutants for this reason. A lot of their members tend to be forgotten and yet are super powerful when their abilities are properly utilized. Xian Koiman possesses limited telepathic abilities, but can have a strong sense of sort of psychic projection. Karma can emit a wave of energy that disables her target's consciousness, allowing her to take over control of their body, experiencing what they experience as though she were actually in their body, sensing what they taste, hear, smell, see, and feel. Those she controls will awaken unaware, afterwards experiencing this possession as if they had just been in a dream and basically had been sleepwalking. She can also do this on a mass scale, possessing multiple people, though she must overcome many challenges in order to fluidly control multiple people at once. Number 9. Hijack. Hijack is David Bond, a technopath mutant who can use his abilities to telepathically control any vehicle. He's used his powers to control massive sentinels and even control an entire helicarrier. The rule seems to be if you can steer it, fly it, or drive it, Hijack can control it. Although it has been implied that the vehicle in question likely needs to have some kind of mechanical makeup, so sailboats are probably not something Bond could manipulate, unless you had a sailboat that also had an engine, which I think is a thing now. I don't think all sailboats are just sails. Still, in a world where we are surrounded by tech and tons of engine-powered vehicles, David Bond's abilities are pretty powerful. Alas, he has only appeared in less than 50 issues of comics. Someone tell me, where is David Bond now? Where is he on Krakoa? Is he there? I want to see him. Number 8. Zorn. In the reality of Earth 1610, Zorn is actually Zorn, but is not the only version of Zorn. Wow, that sounded confusing. What I mean to say is that Zorn is his own person, Kuan Yin, but has a sibling who's also named Zorn, but with a Z. They were each given their powers as part of the Southeast Asian Republic's Super Soldier program. Zorn with an X is the one who you typically see clad in the color white. He is an amazingly powerful telepath and telekinetic. While both characters may have been introduced later and have been somewhat short-lived, they are both presented as being pretty powerful during their time in the comics. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 7. Zorn. This is the sibling I was telling you about. Zorn with a Z or a Z is Shen Yin, the brother of Zorn with an X. His powers are much darker in nature. It's actually believed in the comics that Zorn and Zorn were sort of destined to bring a sense of balance to the world and mutant kind, symbolically sort of representing yin and yang, black and white. Zorn's powers are basically akin to a black hole. He emits a black hole energy and can use his powers to manipulate gravity. In the end, Zorn sacrifices himself when he realizes that he cannot win in the war against the children of tomorrow. In his death, he effectively becomes a black hole in retaliation. Number 6. Colossus. A strong mutant on Earth 616 and in 1610. Initially, Pyotr Rasputin did not possess super strength as part of his power set, but was given a drug called Banshee to enhance his strength, as well as a job working for the Russian mafia. Eventually, he ended up joining the X-Men, though he would leave the team on a few separate occasions. He'd managed to hold off Scarlet Witch, save a submarine that not even the Ultimates were capable of saving, and defeat Proteus, David Xavier, Xavier's son, who threatened the entire world with violence, traveling around and targeting international landmarks the world over. Differences between Colossus of Earth 1610 and that of Earth 616 is that here he isn't inherently strong, as I said before, in his steel form, but needs Banshee to give him that boost. And he's also gay. He even for a time dates fellow mutant Northstar. Number 5. Jimmy Hudson. Jimmy Hudson is the son of Wolverine. He also inherited his claws, superior senses, and regenerative healing factor. Like his dad, it's believed that his powers may actually be based in survival as opposed to just healing, with James being seen as adapting to survive injury or harsh environments as needed. Unlike Wolverine, Jimmy can choose to coat his claws in metal, as this is actually part of his power set, and it's believed that only his claws end up being coated, not the rest of his skeleton. Jimmy was a crucial member of the mutant resistance, which fought against Sentinel and militia attacks that threatened to wipe out the mutants. In the end, the mutants were victorious and were given a choice of going to live on their own piece of land in Utah or taking a cure for their mutation. Jimmy was one of the few mutants who decided to keep his powers. Number 4. Storm. Initially in the Ultimate Universe, Storm didn't have great control over her powers, and mostly got by stealing cars, but after the X-Men took her in, she learned how to control and even master her powers, allowing her to become one of the most fearsome and powerful mutants around. Ultimate Storm is so cool. Storm is so fast, she has been shown to be able to catch people who are falling in midair, dodge bullets, and even keep pace with a plane. Impressive considering planes on average travel at speeds over 540 miles per hour or over 870 kilometers per hour. That's fast. She's also likely not someone you want to tangle with, as even when she takes hits in battles, she tends to keep fighting or instinctively strike back. Using her lightning storm and weather control powers, she's also managed to defeat multiple opponents with one single attack, whether they be Sentinel opponents or human opponents, and in some cases, even killing them. I think at one point she kills like 11 people at once, and it's just like, okay. Don't mess with Storm. Got it. I mean, I already knew that before from Earth 616, but now I really know. Number 3, Jean Grey. In Ultimates, it almost seems there is nothing Jean can't do. Before she joined the X-Men, she was in a mental institution as the manifestation of her powers made her seem insane. However, Professor X would save Jean and recruit her on his X-Men team, with her being the second member. In the Ultimate Universe, we have seen Jean become possessed by what she thought was a cosmic entity referred to as the Phoenix God, and almost lose control and her sanity. The biggest problem with Jean is similar to that of her Earth 616 counterpart. Immense power threatens to basically break her mind, or at least take over her sense of sanity. In the comics, Jean is not only a skilled telepath, and was even able to read Wolverine's mind, something Professor X believed wasn't even possible, but she also happens to, weirdly enough, be a skilled doctor and surgeon as well, although I'm pretty sure she doesn't have any medical license. Say what? Jean was even shown to be capable of connecting and tapping into the multiverse to reach out and see various versions of herself. Basically, she can do everything, because being a telepath is crazy powerful. Number 2, Magneto. Obviously, one of the most powerful mutants out there has to be Magneto, not just for the powers of magnetism that he wields, but also just for his influence. Magneto was the mastermind behind Ultimatum. I suppose I should use the term mastermind lightly there, as Ultimatum in general is not really seen very favorably in most fans' eyes. I admit it was controversial and caused a lot of perhaps needless death. In fact, I would say it was needless death. But you have to acknowledge just how much of a threat it painted Magneto out to be. While I'm not sure about Magneto basically committing genocide as a victim of one himself, you have to admit that this made him one of the most fearsome characters in all of the Ultimate Universe. And for Magneto, there is power in fear, even though oddly enough, it is usually fear that tends to power the hate that he often stands up against. Number 1, Kitty Pryde. One of the most powerful characters as a leader especially. She ends up becoming the ruler of the mutant tent nation that the mutants dub Utopia. This is a portion of land in Utah that the mutants who choose not to accept the cure are given. In fact, all those who refuse to take the cure are forced to live there. Kitty ends up fighting a war against Jean Grey in the Ultimate Universe as well, because Jean wants Kitty to join the mutant nation that she was put in charge of ruling after the death of Zorn with an X, Xian. But Kitty refuses to bring their people together. Kitty is such a good leader, she even steps down from her title as the leader of Utopia to help ease the target on her own people's backs because of her and Jean's conflict. Kitty and Utopia would end up winning that war, and Kitty would also play a crucial role in defeating Galactus as well. Also, I gotta say, that whole World War X thing, it was pretty weird. It was pretty weird, friends.
In a 10 Age of Apocalypse Nightcrawler, Kurt Darkholme, a native of the Divergent timeline known as the Age of Apocalypse, was a member of the mutant resistance known as the X-Men. The timeline of the Age of Apocalypse diverged widely from the 616 timeline after the premature death of Charles Xavier in his early adulthood. As a result, the ancient mutant apocalypse ascended early and embarked on a reign of terror across the globe because, of course. Kurt, donning the codename Nightcrawler, stood with his fellow mutant heroes, the X-Men, in defiance of the genocidal anti-human regime of Apocalypse. Just like his 616 version, Nightcrawler could teleport, though it was through another dimension, and had a radius of 2 miles at a time, carrying 2 to 3 people along with himself. This version also favored teleporting sections of people away, in essence amputating them instantly, which is brutal. Not to mention the 2 freaking swords that he carries around because he can. Teleporting their heads somewhere else wasn't enough. This version wanted to be able to hack his opponent's limb from limb. And at 9, X-Men 2099. X-Men 2099 is a comic book series published by Marvel from 1993 to 1996 that chronicled the adventures of an X-Men team in the year 2099. It extends the vast Marvel 2099, universe, which features future versions of other popular Marvel characters such as Spider-Man and Hulk, and this team featured an ever-changing roster. However, the main core group of characters featured people like Desert Ghost, Skullfire, Bloodhawk, Mainstreak, Metalhead, Cerebra, Crystalline, Junkpile, La Lunatica, Serpentina, and Sham. The group is certainly more powerful given that they're in the 2099 universe, which saw future versions of heroes and villains gain all kinds of powerful upgrades, so needless to say, this group is going to be something to behold, with members like Metalhead being able to take on the properties of any metal that they touch, which also would be applied to adamantium or vibranium, or Junkpile, who can telekinetically draw metallic objects to himself and then use them to rebuild his body or add to his physical mass, making him basically resistant to harm. So yeah, certainly an interesting X-Men version.
Number 8, Copycat. Copycat is someone whose real name you might recognize thanks to the Deadpool films. Vanessa Carlyle is her name, and while we got a version of her in the films who is Deadpool's love interest, which also happens in the comics, the cinematic version of Vanessa is pretty different from her comic book counterpart, who I might add also has now been permadead for years. Copycat in the comics is a mutant who has powers similar to Mystique's, except her powers can't be used as creatively as Mystique has used hers in the past. Remember when Mystique turned into paper? That's what I'm talking about. Copycat's powers allow her to impersonate and shapeshift into other humanoid beings, even copying their powers if they have any. At least we've seen that happen before. Her powers also make her impersonations so good that even those closest to the person would be fooled by them. In theory. With mutants able to return, it would be interesting to see how Deadpool and Copycat might interact in the future if she was to be resurrected. And she's a mutant, so could happen. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want to learn more about some forgotten mutants, you want to reminisce and look back, be sure to let us know in the comments below. Give this video a like. Honestly, I have so many more mutants that I want to talk to you about, so it's a gift for you and a gift for me when you do that. Number 7, Forget Me Not. I don't think this list would be complete without Forget Forget-Me-Not. This mutant's real name remains unknown, likely because of how his powers work. Forget-Me-Not's mutant power is that he is basically undetectable. No one, even people who have met and know him, is able to remember his existence. This makes him hard to even notice in a room, and Professor X himself had to actually set a mental alarm clock reminder like every little while in order to keep Forget-Me-Not in his mind. In the end, Forget-Me-Not was literally forgotten by all the mutants, and we haven't really seen or remembered him in a long time. He was spotted, however, momentarily in issue 9 of X Factor for those that were really keeping an eye out for him, but that was only in the corner and background of one single panel as far as I know. So I don't know if we can classify that as any major return for this character, who still seems to have gone unspotted by some and definitely seems to remain forgotten. Sadly. Number 6. Gentle. Gentle is a mutant from the nation of Wakanda. He made his first appearance in the 2004 series New X-Men in issue 23. Nesno Abidemi had it rough when he was younger, as his father was Russian and his mother Wakandan, which meant he grew up always being treated and feeling like an outsider. His power grants him superhuman strength as his muscles can rapidly expand in size, making him super strong, but also at the cost of being in immense pain, both physically from the expansion and due to psychological trauma that he carries with him from his past. Because of this, Gentle is covered in unique and iconic vibranium tattoos, which help with the pain and also help him to better control his powers, preventing him from overexerting himself and potentially dying while using them. Gentle is a really cool character, and although you may have spotted him partying it up on Krakoa, he hasn't been given much to do as a key player in any of the current X books just yet. Number 5. Bandera. As someone who is currently reading the original run of Wolverine, I can't in good conscience create this list and leave out La Bandera, a favorite supporting character and mutant of mine from that series. La Bandera made her first appearance in the 80s Wolverine series in issue 19. Bandera went on an adventure with Wolverine where she helped him put a stop to the tyrannical and militaristic rule of President Caradid in Tierra Verde, also helping Wolverine to defeat an ancient monster that Caradid had unleashed known as Spore. In the end, she stayed behind in Tierra Verde to help the people there transition to a more democratic form of government. She wouldn't even get to remain alive for a decade in the comics, being killed off in the mid-90s in an issue of Captain America. The island of Krakoa and the planet Mars are now where mutants call home, and resurrection protocols are in place to bring all fallen and lost mutants back, but we still haven't spotted Bandera yet for some reason. Where's she at, the 5? Bring her back! I'm looking at you, all 5 of you mutants that are resurrecting everyone. Get to it. Chop chop. Number 4. Mimic. Mimic started off as an iconic mutant villain when he first appeared in X-Men issue 19. He has resurfaced in the comics on more than one occasion and was mentioned, but we haven't seen what he's been up to lately on the mutant island nation Krakoa. All that we know is he's probably there doing something? Mimic's powers allow him to copy the powers and skill set and level of those within a certain vicinity to him. He was like the original Rogue or Hope Summers when it came to his mimicry abilities. Over time, some of the abilities he's taken, those of the original X-Men, set at their power levels that they were at originally, became permanent for him, and he no longer needed them nearby to use said powers. So he has those ones permanently. But it should be noted that they're capped at original level. Number 3. Caliban. Caliban made a brief appearance in the 2019 X-Force series in issue number 1, but only so that he could basically get shot in the chest. Yeah. Otherwise, although Caliban has been one of the main Morlocks that we've come to know in the comics over the years, he hasn't really made a lasting impression in any of the current X books, more acting as a victim in the brutal Krakoan massacre that rounded out the end of that first issue. Caliban has never really been depicted as a super powerful mutant, but he is an important character in terms of the story and the history of the X-Men. His mutant powers allow him to sense and detect other mutants, and other than that, his powers are conditional, really only kicking in when his life is threatened, granting him super strength and the ability to absorb and multiply the fear of others. Number 2. Leila Miller. Leila Miller is the wife of Jamie Madrox, Multiple Man, who we've seen quite a bit throughout Krakoa and the X-Books, as Jamie's dupes generally are used to undertake various massive work efforts on the island, and off the island. Whether he's aiding in Krakoan medicine and drug production, or helping to sew and create everyone's Hellfire Gala outfits at the behest of Jumbo Carnation. But while Jamie has been everywhere, Leila has been almost nowhere in sight. We do get a brief glimpse of her more recently through a computer screen and then throughout a couple in-person panels in X-Corp issue number 3, where we learn that Jamie's and Leila's son, Davey, is about ready to take his first steps. Yay! Leila wants Jamie to leave the lab to come home and witness those steps, but Jamie responds that the launch he's supervising is too important and he can't leave. Leila frustratedly hangs up on him, and Jamie later sends a dupe in his place, planning to later absorb the dupe and therefore acquire the memories of being there with his son. But other than these few moments, Leila has been MIA. I know she's busy with Davey, but it would be really cool to see her in action, as she's a really cool mutant and a really cool character. So bring Leila back, please. Number 1. Destiny. Destiny is probably one of the most anticipated mutants to return. She has not been forgotten by her wife and lover Mystique or by readers, but pretty much everyone else on Krakoa seems to be interested in forgetting about her. But still, using her journals to likely try and figure out the future to come based on her prophecies. At least I assume that's what Moira McTaggart is doing with those journals. I especially want Destiny to come back because I just want to see her and Mystique reunited, and because I kind of want Mystique to sow chaos and destruction and just generally raise hell in order to get Destiny returned. And then I want to see that payoff, like I want to see it actually come to fruition. Just sounds like a cool story. We'll likely be getting something to that effect in Inferno, but only time will tell if Destiny will return or not, before, during, or afterwards. She might not return at all, because Adeline Pryor's also coming back, so Inferno could be about that too. Number 10. Prodigy. I feel like a lot of people maybe forgot about Prodigy, as he's been MIA for some time in the comics, and was depowered during the events of M-Day. But with the magic of Krakoa and Dawn of X, he was able to return to us, being resurrected and also regaining his powers. 1. Prodigy happens to be a super genius, but this is also because he's a telepath with the ability to basically mimic anyone's skill set and share their knowledge while nearby. This has also been shown in the past to extend to fighting precognition, where he can basically use his abilities to read a person and predict their next move of attack in a battle, which is pretty sweet. He often also builds his own advanced tech, and even when depowered is known to possess a great level of intellect, making him a challenging adversary whether or not he has his mutant abilities. Even as a depowered mutant, you might not want to mess with him. Number 9. Lady Mastermind. Lady Mastermind, aka Reagan Wingard, recently popped back up in the giant-sized Nightcrawler comics and was welcomed into the mutant nation of Krakoa. Some, however, may not know or appreciate her mutant history and background. Just who is Lady Mastermind? Well, she's the daughter of Jason Wingard, aka the original villain known as Mastermind. Her powers take after her father's, allowing her to create realistic illusions projected into her target's minds. While she also has an even lesser known suspected half-sister, Reagan's powers are often depicted as being the more powerful between the two, with it even being said that her abilities are even more stronger than her father's. Additionally, she is also fairly skilled in hand-to-hand combat, a skill set her father actually very much lacked. He was hilarious in a fight. He's like a rag doll. Sorry Mastermind.
And at 8. Ultimate Cyclops. On Earth 1610, Scott's parents died in a plane crash when he was young, and he and his older brother Alex were separated, with Scott ending up in foster care. One day at school, he was beaten and humiliated by a bully for his inability to fight back and wet himself in front of his peers. Great. He returned home where his powers activated and accidentally killed his foster parents, Noah and Janelle. Great. At some point later in his life though, Scott was dating a young woman named Lorna Dane, until she dumped him for his brother Alex. That stings, man, especially since the relationship between the two brothers became even worse after that, and Scott became estranged to Alex, no longer speaking to him after he joined the X-Men sometime later. Although that's understandable. In the Ultimate Universe, Scott is able to absorb ambient energy from his environment, such as sunlight and electricity, and store it within his cells, metabolizing the energy in order to open a dimensional aperture through his eyes to unleash an exotic form of energy as heatless blasts of concussive force. He was also able to use the ambient collected energy to fly, deactivate, and channel his energy blast through any part of his body besides his eyes, which is freaking nuts and sounds pretty dope, minus the whole being able to not control it thing. And at 7, Ultimate Wolverine. Wolverine suffered from amnesia. As a result, what little was known about his early life was both suspect and unverifiable. It is believed that at one point Wolverine had a wife and child, but they were supposedly murdered by Sabretooth. As both Wolverine and Sabretooth's memories had been tampered with in the past, this claim was highly suspect. However, Wolverine did own a wedding ring that served as his only link to the past, so maybe there's something there. This version of Wolverine also has a healing factor, disease resistance, which is useful nowadays, toxin resistance, resistance, damn I wish I had that now, cause you know, toxicity. Extended longevity, superhuman senses, superhuman strength, superhuman stamina, which must be why the ladies love him, superhuman agility, superhuman reflexes, and the classic adamantium-laced skeletal structure and retractable claws. Wolverine is also an experienced hand-to-hand combatant and is an expert assassin and can at least lift 800 pounds. Like bro, can you even lift bro? Spider-Man can lift twice that. That's not even with the symbiote suit, which I guess technically doesn't count because it's a separate thing, but still, come on Wolverine, step up your game. And at 6, Goddess of Thunder. What if Storm was the God of Thunder? That's in essence what the story of What If Volume 2 number 12 from 1990 asks. Well, in reality it's what if the X-Men stayed on Asgard, but still. After visiting Asgard, several members of the X-Men and New Mutants decided to stay this time, while those returning to Earth drove the X-Men into a new era. Many of those staying though found new loves. Wolfsbane found love in the Himhrari, Prince of the Asgardian Wolves, while Rogue found love in Fandral the Dashing. Of the Warriors of Three, Cipher became a scholar, translating and reading scripts long dead in Asgard, while Cannonball married Kindra, the daughter of the Dwarf King. Nightcrawler and Sunspot became warriors, while Mirage became one of the Valkyrie. Magic became the Sorceress Supreme of Asgard and assumed the role once held by the Enchantress, and Storm became the new Goddess of Thunder, since Thor was trapped in the form of a Midgard frog. Yep, that's right, Throg! Carnilla and Hela conspired to steal Storm's soul with the Sword of Surtur, but were defeated. The sword was also then destroyed during the battle, and Loki was unable to draw his mystic energy from it, releasing Thor. But with Odin dead, Thor renounced his claim to the throne and returned to Earth, so Storm became the Queen of Asgard. Pretty dope. Halfway through, in at number 5, Bloodstorm. A street thief living in the streets of Egypt, the mutant Ororo Munro sealed her fate when she attempted to pickpocket a man who turned out to be Dracula. She eventually managed to free herself from the vampire's control and found a new purpose among the X-Men. Unfortunately, her thirst for blood overpowered her, which resulted in her killing at least both Beast and Professor X. Scott and Ororo developed romantic feelings for each other, but Scott was hesitant to act on them since he expected to return to his proper time along with the rest of the young X-Men. But also, you know, she's a vampire. This ain't Twilight. During a date though, Storm started to convince Scott to pursue his feelings, but the couple was attacked by Ahab and his hounds. During the ensuing fight, Bloodstorm was impaled by Ahab with his silver-coated spear. Fueled by rage, Scott got the upper hand, forcing Ahab to retreat, but Scott ended up having to carry Bloodstorm's corpse, and his arms dissolved into dust. Yeah. In addition to the powers of Storm from Earth 616, Bloodstorm can also shapeshift into a mist or a flock of bats, and can hypnotize people into doing her bidding with only a gaze, cause, you know, female vampires. She also feeds on a consenting Scott in an attempt to satiate her hunger and prevent her from going dark again. Only feed on those who consent. And at 4, New Exiles Rogue. Rogue's powers can be difficult to explain. Actually, not really. Simply put, Rogue's powers allow her to absorb powers from other people, even people who aren't super. She absorbs like memories and stuff. But she isn't really able to control it. She has slight control over her powers, but not enough to make her scary OP. However, the same cannot be said for the Rogue introduced in New Exiles, since this version of Rogue has complete control over her powers, technically speaking, since she can only absorb powers through skin-to-skin contact on her hands rather than her whole body, so if she just wears gloves, she's fine. She can also recall powers from people that she has already touched, which sounds weird now that I'm thinking about it, but still, this is freaking nuts. Imagine just like going around to like a mutant prison or whatever in the raft and just like high-fiving every villain there. You'd gain their abilities, right? And then just boom, you're basically a god. Even if you did that with the X-Men or the Avengers, but like not the Hulk, because I don't want to be like a giant green behemoth. But like maybe I would just like, I wouldn't have to turn into one. I'd just like have his super strength while he's in Hulk form. And I don't know how that would realistically work, okay? But it still sounds wicked. Getting close to the end, into number 3, Mutant X Professor X. Charles Xavier of Earth 1298 believed in harmony between man and mutant, formed along with his friend Magus the X-Men, and led the team towards that peaceful goal. However, the day they fought the Shadow King, everything changed. The good in Xavier was corrupted, and he left the team to explore his powers further. When he returned, it was during an attack by the Juggernaut. Xavier fired a blast at Juggernaut, but it missed and killed Magneto's lover instead. Xavier left the X-Men for good after that, and traveled the world world seeking out telepaths, who he captured and incarcerated around the globe, because of course he would. Xavier was also able to take over S.H.I.E.L.D. and absorbed a load of telepaths' powers into himself. This, in combination with the corruption from the Shadow King, amplified Professor X's powers to an unknown extent. But I think it's safe to say that that's pretty damn terrifying. Man, imagine Rogue absorbing those powers. Man, she should have been higher on the list. The hell? But ultimately, in at number 2, X-Men The End, Jean Grey. To say that the X-Men stories revolve around Jean Grey would be a slight overstatement, but in essence they always seem to at some point be trying to fight off the Phoenix Force from corrupting Jean or having to deal with her evil version. However, the version of Jean from the X-Men The End is the most powerful version we've seen, having fully embraced the Phoenix Force and merged with her evil doppelganger or clone or whatever the hell it is. The End stories revolve around various characters meeting their end or having some stories come to an end, which we can see when Cassandra Nova attacks the X-Men and the Shi'ar Imperial Guard. She then begins to erase Xavier's mind. Marvel Girl summons her residual Phoenix Force energies and engages Cassandra in psychic battle, but Jean Grey, once again the Phoenix, uses her powers to heal Cable when suddenly she and Cyclops are killed by a psionic blast fired by a mind-controlled Marvel Girl. So RIP. Cassandra's astral form leaps out of Marvel Girl's mind and merges with the Phoenix Force, and there's a whole lot more to the story though, so if you're interested in it, I highly recommend reading it because that will do it way more justice than I can. Oh, damn. Finally, in number 1, Brother Mutant. Brother Mutant was created in the Exiles universe of Earth 127 and made his first appearance in Exiles number 85 from 2006. Brother Mutant was an amalgamated being created when the Scarlet Warlock tried to imbue Magneto with the adamantium-laced skeleton of Wolverine and failed, causing Wolverine, Magneto, Quicksilver, Mesmero, and Scarlet Warlock to merge into a single being, which is ironic because that ends up in essence giving Magneto an adamantium-laced skeleton, since Brother Mutant was capable of using the combined powers of all 5 characters who inhabited him, which is absolutely nuts considering how a gender-bent Scarlet Witch was combined with Quicksilver, Magneto with Wolverine's healing factor and claws. So yeah, I'm sure you can see why this guy is number 1. Various James Howletts from other realities were dispatched by the Timebreakers to stop Brother Mutant, but were unsuccessful, only defeating him when the Exiles and one last group of Wolverines just wrecked him, I guess.
Number 10, Devil Dinosaur. Let's start from far left field. Devil Dinosaur is, well, a dinosaur hailing from the alternate reality of Earth 78411, aka Dinosaur World, a universe that exists in the primordial past. Now in his youth, Devil Dinosaur faced a close call with the end of his life, nearly consumed by a tribe of ruthless beings known as the Killer Folk, who inhabited this world. However, he was saved by Moon Boy, a young member of a rival tribe to the Killer Folk known as the Small Folk. Now when Devil Dinosaur was exposed to the relentless flames of the Killer Folk's fiery assault, the fiery baptism triggered a mutation within the dinosaur, granting him extraordinary powers beyond those of his kind. Specifically, it gave him the intelligence of an average human. Now simultaneously, it also altered his once olive green skin to a striking and vibrant shade of flame red. Other than his intelligence and his red skin, Devil Dinosaur also exhibited unwavering loyalty to his companion, Moon Boy, who he shared a ton of adventures with, even eventually coming over to the main 616 Marvel Universe. Number 9, Madame Web. I actually completely forgot that this was the case, but Cassandra Webb, who would eventually become Madame Web, was born a mutant with tremendous telepathic and precognitive powers. Those are some solid powers to have, but she was also born paralyzed and blind, which does complicate things quite a bit. Over time, things got even worse for her physically as she developed myasthenia gravis, a chronic autoimmune disorder in which antibodies destroy the communication between nerves and muscles, resulting in weakness of the skeletal muscles. So, in order to try and help her, her husband built her a life support system that she had to remain attached to. And could you imagine someone loving you so much that they build a life support system for you? I can't. She eventually became involved with Spider-Man, using her powers to fill him in on crimes that she could not physically deal with herself. She also revealed that she knew his secret identity due to her telepathy, making her one of the first people to ever learn Spider-Man's identity.
Number 8, Hijack. I mean, you know me, you can never have too many technopaths on the X-Men, hence why I'm suggesting that Hijack deserves membership. For those who are unfamiliar, Hijack is a mutant whose powers allow him to control cars, hence his name, Hijack, because he could basically hijack, well, just about any car he wanted, whenever he wanted. Sure, his powers aren't as crazy in terms of his relation to technology as somebody like Forge, let's say, or even someone like Trinary, who can literally communicate with tech, or even Cipher, whose powers have been expanded to include technology, being able to understand tech and therefore in a way kind of communicate with it and sort of get it to do his bidding. But at the same time, I still feel like Hijack is pretty cool, and I also just love people that have car-related powers. So can we get David Bond on the team or what? I also know Hijack has not been like around recently, but that's also definitely why I want him on the team. Number 7, Nature Girl. Nature Girl was part of the X-Men Green team. However, that team has actually never been considered as an official team by the X-Men, okay? It was basically made because Nature Girl just couldn't take what was happening to the planet anymore, and she decided to go out on her own. So this is definitely not a licensed team. The X-Men are not like, yeah, you go Nature Girl. Everyone was like, whoa, Nature Girl. Even readers, a lot of readers were like, whoa. There were a few other mutants who ended up getting recruited to join X-Men Green, or mutant-related folks in some cases, including Curse and oddly Sauron, who, you know, isn't a mutant but is also a mutate. But when it comes to X-Men Green, it's not even considered an official X team, any way you slice it. So I really feel like Nature Girl deserves her turn at being on the X-Men team. I'm actually surprised she hasn't been on the X-Men earlier, and while now she's in a totally different place, she is honestly an extremely powerful character. Her powers allow her to reach out to nature and communicate with it, basically possessing nature empathy, if you will. It's using this ability that she is able to often get the animals of Earth to do what she asks of them, but not because they must obey her, more because they just actually really like and respect Nature Girl, just as she really likes and respects them. So they usually are just like, yeah, we'll do that because that sounds like a cool thing to do for you. And maybe their goals are aligned as well a lot of the times. Number 6, Strong Guy. Energy absorption powers are some of the strongest around, which is why I'm honestly surprised that Strong Guy has not yet been formally invited to become a member of the X-Men mainstay team. He's been a powerful resident of Mutant, and in that way a sort of X-Men, and he was also part of the X-Men team during X-Men Disassembled, but that was also a time where we had like multiple X-Men teams going on all at once, and at the time I don't even think that Strong Guy was part of like the initial 2 main teams that started out there, Red and Gold, and at that time, I mean, pretty much everyone that was a mutant was kind of given a membership card, so it wasn't as exclusive as being on the team usually is. Don't know if we can really count it. More of an X-Men mob than an X-Men team, really. So I'd still like to see Strong Guy added onto the main roster. Number 5, Eyeboy. So this is a pretty selfish point. I'm gonna be honest with you folks. I really love Eyeboy, and if you have watched the channel for some time, you probably already know this about me. I'm a big Eyeboy fan. I also love Peeper, or Peepers as he has been known before. I don't know, I just really love people with eye powers, I guess. It's a thing. I don't know why, I just like it. Eyeboy is therefore definitely someone I would love to see on the team. His powers are often underrated as well, in my opinion. He's covered in eyes, which sounds useless and weird to most people, I guess, but it actually gives him all kinds of different types of sight. He can see things that most people can't see. He has telescopic vision, can see really far away, he can see things that other people wouldn't even know exist. It's even implied that he can see into other dimensions as well. Personally, I think having someone that is that kind of perspective to see pretty much anything around you, even stuff that isn't visible, would be super useful. Speaking of seeing things that aren't visible, he also has microscopic vision too. Number 4, Kid Omega. Kid Omega is one that surprises me as having never been an X-Men, but I guess he's really only been X-Men affiliated, being a student at multiple schools. He has also been a member of the X-Force as well, but not the main X-Men team, I don't think. Quentin is extremely powerful and has been destined to be the Phoenix before in the comics, so I think he would make a great addition to the team should they ever want to consider him for a full membership. And he just returned, so we could have him. He's old now, but he came back. We thought he was dead, but no. Number 3, Madeline Pryor. While Madeline has played ally to the X-Men on multiple occasions, she is not herself an X-Men, nor has she ever been an X-Men. Although she has like said to me my X-Men before, I believe. She gotta say that during Dark Web, I think, but she doesn't have official status. To me, this is a travesty considering how many other villains have gotten to join up with the X-Men team. Sure, Madeline did some terrible things, but she also has one of the most tragic stories out there. She was created to be used as a pawn by Sinister to get the child he so desperately wanted. In a romance with Scott Summers, she was abandoned, left alone with their newborn when he returned to the X-Men after Jean was revealed to still be alive. Maddie has had it kinda tough in regards to her life. Could you also imagine the power the X-Men team would have if she joined up while Jean was also on the team, I mean, that is a lot of psionic power. If we want to have like a completely psionic X-Men team, I think you definitely need Madeline Pryor on it personally. Tempo. Tempo is super cool. Having seen a little bit more of her through the Marauder series, I have been greatly impressed with her power set. Tempo basically has the power to manipulate and, in a way, control time. She can even stop it. She can speed it up, she can slow it down, she can change the tempo of it, if you will, and can manipulate it in a way. Time control to me is something that has always been super powerful. Having a character that control or manipulate time in this way would make sense for the X-Men, and they have had a few time manipulators before affiliated with them, but I don't think ever Tempo, alas. Tempo, I think, was actually considered to be one of the people we could vote for to join the X-Men with the elections in recent years. However, she sadly did not win the vote, and as a result, she didn't get to be on the team. But hey, at least she did get to be on the secret X-Men team, basically made up of the people that didn't get to be voted onto the team, which I thought was pretty cool. And later, she would end up joining the Marauders, and I have enjoyed reading her in that, so hey. Number 1, Manifold. Wow. What can I say? I cannot believe that Manifold has not yet been an X-Men member. That's insane. That's a mistake. Someone should fix that. Manifold is probably one of the most powerful teleporters we have out there, and that's because he isn't even really technically a teleporter. Manifold's powers allow him to communicate with the universe and basically ask it to literally bend over backwards to do his bidding. He can ask the universe to fold itself in half so that he can jump from one point to another point, moving even all the way across the universe and beyond, seemingly teleporting, but really just communicating with the cosmos. The only downside to his powers is that they really only work in the 616 reality, but still, that shouldn't limit him getting X-Men status, because we've seen people like Nightcrawler become an X-Men, and Nightcrawler's powers really only allow him to teleport short distances, and Kurt also tends to tire quite a bit over time when he uses them. Sorry Kurt, but it's true. The best that we've seen from Manifold in regards to his affiliation with mutant teams that are X-related, I believe, is Sword. And even with the Sword team, they've really only been mutant related in recent years. Other than that, they're just really a space superhero slash SHIELD team normally, so yeah. Number 10, Goblin. Goblin was a pretty interesting and unique mutant who first appeared in the pages of Alpha Flight in issue 48 back in 1987. Goblin is the twin sister of Pathway, Laura Dean. Both siblings have been members of Alpha Flight in the past, as well as Beta Flight and Gamma Flight. While Goblin was in her mother's womb, they actually sensed early on that she was a mutant because of her unusually goblin-like appearance. Her parents wanted to abort her because of this, so her sister, Laura, who was in there with her instinctively, used her own mutant powers to teleport Goblin to Live World for her safety. For a long time, people actually thought Goblin was Pathway, and that Laura could actually just transform into Goblin. Eventually, Laura and Goblin, as well as everyone else, would learn the truth about their relation to one another, and their swapping of places throughout Laura's life. Goblin and Pathway have both not been seen for years since they left Department H. Goblin's mutation has resulted in her being super agile, possessing a unique appearance, and having a slight healing factor. It'd be cool to see, I think, both Goblin and Pathway return. They've been gone for so long. What are they up to? Where'd they go? Guess they're just roaming around in Canada? Number 9, Hijack. David Bond is a mutant that I personally quite enjoyed having in the comics, but who I don't think we have seen for a few years now, unless I completely missed him popping up on Krakoa somewhere. I don't think he's even been spotted there just yet, like not even in the background that I can recall. Though we have gotten a few technology-based mutants such as Sage, Trinary, and Warlock back as major characters, Hijack still remains somewhat forgotten to the sands of time. Where did he go? David Bond is a technopath who is able to command and control all kinds of vehicles, more often cars, but we've also seen him take control of the SHIELD helicarrier and Sentinels before besides. One of the helicarriers anyways. Number 8, Manifold. If you thought Luka was an interesting character, wait till you hear about Manifold. Although with Luka being newer, you may already know of Manifold because Manifold's been around for a while. But do you know how exactly his powers work? That is what is so cool, but can also be kind of confusing. Manifold is seen as a massively powerful teleporter, but the interesting thing is he actually isn't. I mean, he is really powerful, but he's not technically a teleporter. Instead, Eden Vessi's mutant powers are based in communication, specifically communication with space. He is considered a universal shaper who can basically communicate with the universe over 616 and ask it to bend and fold for him, which is how he appears to teleport himself and others such great distances. But really, it's just talking.
Number 7, Thumbelina. Christina Anderson has an ability that quite a few characters in comic books have. That would be the ability to shrink. Thumbelina can reduce herself down to about 1/4 of an inch tall. That ability is perfectly fine in my eyes. Like I said, lots of characters can do this. My problem with Thumbelina, and also some other shrinkers, is how the heck do they retain their full-size strength when they get smaller? Or in Thumbelina's case, how the hell does she get stronger when she shrinks? I'm sorry to try and bring physics into any debate about superheroes and their various powers, but it makes absolutely no sense in the laws of physics that someone who is smaller can be more strong than they were when they were regular size. Ants, for example, if they were the size of a person, they would be insanely strong, as they are able to carry 20 times their body weight. So that's like an average person being able to carry like a small SUV or something. But since ants are so damn small, that means they can carry like a leaf or something. Thumbelina should not be able to knock someone out when she is 1/4 of an inch tall. I'm sorry, that's all I gotta say.
Number 6, Iska the Unbeaten. Iska's powers are really cool, don't get me wrong, but how does it work exactly? I feel like we still have a lot of exploring to do with this character before we can really firmly answer that question. I've been reading Iska since she came into the comics and I'm still confused. Iska made her first appearance during the 2020 X-Men series, appearing in a tie-in issue to the X-Men crossover event 10 of Swords, which I still personally hold a great fondness for. As such, I also hold a fondness for this character, the sister-in-law to Apocalypse through his mutant wife Genesis. Iska is a mutant of the long-lost mutant island of Araco, and her powers allow her to always win, but sometimes they also force her to always win, like against her will, and then other times, betting against her even can affect the result of a contest, even if she herself isn't involved in that. How does that work? Her powers also do not just extend to physical fights, but all means of competition. So like, if you're, I don't know, doing a coin toss with Iska, she gotta win.
Number 5, Tag. Okay, I actually kinda wish I had Bryan Cruz's power. It just seems like the perfect chaos creating ability. Tag's ability, known as the Pariah effect, allows him to use a form of telepathy when he touches someone that causes the target to emit a psionic signal, which would make them a target for others to run away from or to run towards. Whichever way people would run, they would do it while being fully aware of what they're doing, but unable to control themselves. If they were being controlled to run away, they would continue to do so until they were about 100 feet away. But if the signal caused them to run towards whoever it is, then they would dogpile on top of the target. What's strange is that he could also control who was affected by the ability, like how? He only made one person it, so how does he decide who runs away and who doesn't? He could also make whoever was it run away from themselves. So in other words, they would just run uncontrollably and in random directions, which is actually kind of hilarious. He also would always say, "You're it," which is kind of misleading because that person can't tag someone else to make them it, which is kind of unfair as well. So
Number 4, Dupe. Ranking a little lower for me because he's not necessarily a mutant maybe, is Dupe. Dupe is a creature who often is lumped in with the mutants, but maybe isn't one? We don't really know what Dupe is, never mind his power set. Dupe is basically an unstoppable force and has been implied to be a mutant, an alien, a mutant alien, or something else entirely. As of right now, his origin is classified on his own wiki with him being an artificial being, which really doesn't help to clarify anything. If he is a mutant, and I'm not saying conclusively that he is or that he isn't, as I still feel like his origin in general can be really contested at this point, his powers really are hard to classify. It's kind of like he's an old school superhero in the sense that he seems to have powers for whatever task he needs to accomplish at the time, including resurrection, the power of funk, love eyes, breaking the fourth wall, moving between panels, and even magic. Dupe has been spotted seemingly fighting alongside the mutants as recently as the AXE Judgment Day event, implying that he is at least allied with Krakoa. For those of you that don't think he's a mutant, I still kind of think he might be. Who knows?
Number 3, Hijack. The mutant known as David Bond has the oddly specific ability to control vehicular mechanisms with his thoughts. Basically, this is a form of technopathy, and he has been able to control automobiles and shield helicarriers, starting their engines, steering them, and even opening their doors. He has also been shown to be able to control high-tech suits of armor. Now, This kinda leads me to have more questions than anything else. Like, can he control motorcycles? What about bicycles? Rollerblades? Does the vehicle need to have an internal computer? What's the deal with opening and closing car doors? Does that not count as a form of telepathy? Why can he control high-tech suits of armor? What if a car has mechanical issues? Can he tell? Does the vehicle need to be in complete functioning order? Does it need to be able to turn on? I have so many questions and like no answers.
Number 2, Ice Cream. Ice Cream. Oh boy, what a wonderful weirdo this is. You know how much I have a strange affinity for mutants who have eye-based mutations and visual power sets if you're usually on this channel, and if you are usually on this channel, you should subscribe if you aren't already. But despite the I in Ice Cream's name, he is not one of those. Instead, his mutant power seems to be that he can turn himself into ice cream. Get it? Ice cream. He's only appeared once, I believe, in the comics, making a singular appearance in a strange comic in and of itself from Marvel, Obnoxio the Clown, issue number 1. In this weird single issue, Obnoxio is a clown and he's employed to act as entertainment for a surprise birthday party at the X-Mansion that is being hosted for young X-member Kitty Pryde. While this is going on, Ice Cream, a villain, also appears and sneaks into the mansion, hoping to coordinate a stealthy attack on the X-Men. Instead, he ends up attempting to get Obnoxio out of the way, which he kinda succeeds in, only to later be captured in a block of ice, because he can turn into ice cream. What I want to know is, what was Ice Cream's plan of attack with his power set? Is anyone on the main team featured here lactose intolerant? Was that his plan? I have to know.
Number 1, El Guapo. Tell me that someone, thanks to genetic mutation, can fold space or speak binary code or always win, and I'll look at you sideways, but I'll nod and walk away. But you tell me that some guy named Robbie Rodriguez, thanks to a genetic mutation, has no actual powers of his own, but instead has a symbiotic relationship with a superpowered flying skateboard, which followed his mental commands and sometimes even seemed to have a personality of its own, or acted on his subconscious thoughts. I'm sorry, I'm out. I'm done. Where did the skateboard come from? How did he discover this ability? When did this mutant power activate? Can he do this to other skateboards or inanimate objects in general? You can't just give someone the most unique and insane mutant ability and explain none of it.